Welcome to today's message, where we're going to explore a powerful truth: hardship will turn to blessings. We've all faced difficult times in our lives, times when it seemed like the world was against us and we didn't know how we would make it through. But the good news is that God is always working, even in the midst of hardship. And if we trust in Him and His goodness, we can know that our hardship will ultimately turn to blessings. Understanding hardship. Before we can understand how hardship will turn to blessings, we need to understand what hardship is. Hardship is any difficult or trying circumstance that we face in life. It could be the loss of a loved one, a job, or a relationship. It could be a health crisis, a financial struggle, or a spiritual dry spell. But no matter what form hardship takes, it's always difficult. It's always trying. And it's always a test of our faith. The promise of blessings. But even in the midst of hardship, God promises us blessings. In Jeremiah 29 verse 11, He says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." And in Romans 8 verse 28, He says, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose." These verses promise us that God is always working, even in the midst of hardship, and that He will ultimately turn our hardship to blessings. How hardship turns to blessings. So, how does hardship turn to blessings? Here are a few ways. 1. Through faith. When we trust in God and His goodness, even in the midst of hardship, we can know that He will ultimately turn our hardship to blessings. 2. Through perseverance. When we persevere through hardship, we can develop strength and character that will serve us well in the future. 3. Through God's presence. When we face hardship, God is always with us. And His presence can bring us comfort, peace, and joy, even in the midst of difficulty. 4. Through the lessons we learn, hardship can teach us valuable lessons about ourselves, about God, and about life. And these lessons can ultimately turn to blessings. Testimonies. I want to share with you some testimonies of people who have seen their hardship turn to blessings. One woman shared with me how she lost her job, but then started her own business and is now more successful than she ever thought possible. A man shared with me how he went through a difficult divorce, but then met his current wife and is now happier than he's ever been. A family shared with me how they faced a serious health crisis, but then saw God heal their loved one and are now stronger and more faithful than ever. Conclusion. In conclusion, hardship will turn to blessings. We can trust in God's goodness and promises, even in the midst of difficulty. And we can know that He will ultimately turn our hardship to blessings. Remember, God is always working, even when we can't see it. And He will ultimately turn our hardship to blessings. Let's take one final look at a verse from the Bible. "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose." Romans 8 verse 28. May this verse be a reminder to you of God's goodness and promises, even in the midst of hardship. May you trust in Him and His goodness, and may you see your hardship turn to blessings. Thank you for watching.